from the Exodus story is that when the resistance is getting in the way of evolution, there will be side effects. There will be plagues will naturally break out. One plague after another. When it's time for change, a necessary change, but something, the status quo, the prevailing power structures are getting in the way of such liberation. In this week's Parsha, we are going to be looking at the last 3 plagues and their spiritual significance. Last week's Parsha dealt with the first 7. So the first thing I want to say is don't get caught up in the external aspect of each plague, meaning that there were 10,000 frogs, or that there was hail coming from the sky, or cattle disease. The external part is what those plagues actually, the form of the plagues, but the pnimiut, the inside of each plague, pertains to every generation. So for example, cattle represented the economy. So when there's cattle disease, that means that a plague, one of the plagues to get our attention is a disruption in the economy, right? So the other thing would be lice, right? There's a lot of lice, everybody's itching. Lice to an epidemic proportion means that there is a health scare. So the pnimiut, the inside of each plague, repeats itself in every generation. That is going to precede a great shift. Okay, so these are kind of like when change is involuntary, plagues break out in the form of lots of radical changes in the environment that we're living in. So going back to the last 3 plagues, we have locusts, we have the plague of darkness, and we have the slaying of the firstborn. So let's look at locusts first. The one thing about locusts we know is they consume everything. One sign that society is getting sick is excessive consumption. And we're not just talking about as a nation, but every member of that nation. The locusts they ate everything in sight. And so the first plague, the first sign of sickness is excessive consumption. The second one is no boundaries in a society. And the third one is doing everything as a herd or a swarm in a group. So do you know what the difference between a grasshopper and a locust? And this is going to be very interesting, is that, the Torah, when it wants to talk about people being weak and timid, they call them grasshoppers. If you remember in the Parshat Shlach, when Moses sent the spies to scout the land of Israel, and they came back and they reported that the people appeared as giants and we were but grasshoppers in their eyes. Grasshoppers is a symbol of weakness. We were nothing. We were defenseless. We were only grasshoppers, right? But locusts represent a death penalty for that country. That's it. The locusts are coming. So what's the difference between a grasshopper and a locust? Is a grasshopper, first thing we know about a grasshopper is that they live green. Their color is green. They do very well as solitary insects that can live a life alone and independent and green in a natural, beautiful environment. And their behavior is in check. Nobody sees them as a threat. It's what happens when over time they become hardened. They lose their green color. They become brown. They grow wings. And they give up all their individuality. And they join the swarm. And when they join the swarm, they give up their thinking towards that swarm, towards that group, towards that ideology. Be it political, religious, social, any kind of ideology, any ism, that you give up your green, independent, solitary life to become part of this mass swarm, that's when you know there's danger. This is what the Torah is calling a plague, because the verse itself said the locusts were so great in number, they devoured everything, that even the eye of the land was closed, meaning they lost perspective. The pasuk, the verse says that the darkness that the locusts created as a group did not enable anyone to see the land, meaning to see the big picture. The prevailing indoctrination of whatever belief system that you subscribe to darkens society. The land no longer sees you. You no longer see the land. The eyes are impaired. The vision is blocked, and they become a ruthless, bloodthirsty, mob-like mentality, and they devour everything in sight. Folks, I am not saying not to have a belief system or an opinion, but there is difference. There's a great difference between having an opinion and having the opinion own you. You know, subscribing to a certain mentality, ideology, whether it's a food choice, a lifestyle choice, a political choice, wherever you are on the polarity, okay, do not get to the point where that ideology now owns you. Okay? And this is what happens. This is a difference between a grasshopper and a locust, is now the life of a locust literally owns you. The big difference between a grasshopper and a locust is that a grasshopper can transform and become a locust, but a locust can never go back to becoming a grasshopper. In other words, there is no turning back. You are now owned. You have just given up your thinking to this mob mentality. The one thing about the mob, we said that there's always two sides to the polarity. When you're on one side, your natural enemy is going to be the other side. The question is what happens when that enemy or that challenge goes away? What happens to this ruthless swarm of locusts? Do you know what the locusts do in the animal kingdom, or I should say insect kingdom, is when there's nothing left to devour and consume, they turn on themselves and become cannibals. Again, this one big difference between a green life of a grasshopper and the swarm life of a locust is that when you have nothing else to kill and fight and devour and consume, you turn on your own. So this is the first thing the Torah, the Bible, is telling us is how do we measure the sickness of a society, is when it goes into this great polarity, one versus the other. And they go into this place where it's very, very, very scaring. They're scary. There's lack of boundaries is a symptom. Lack of boundaries. Excessive bottomless pit of hunger and addiction. This is very scary. And of course, allowing others to do the thinking for you. So this is the plague of locusts. So now we're going to get to the very name of the parsha. The name of the parsha is Bo, which means come. Not go, but come. What's the difference between go and come? If you have A and B, go would be you're at A and you want to go to B. But here it's saying come to Pharaoh. So you're already at B and you're going back to A. So in the context of the verse, go to Pharaoh, it makes more sense, except that's not what the Hebrew is actually telling us, which presents a problem. What does it mean, come to Pharaoh? Okay, if you look at any English translation out there, about 90% of the translations are actually wrong. They will For the sake of understanding, they will translate the verse as go to Pharaoh. But there's another Hebrew word for go, and that's lech. We even have a whole parsha where God tells Abraham to go forth. Lech lecha. Okay? So we already have a name for go, a Hebrew word for that. So what does it mean to come? When God says come to Pharaoh, it doesn't conceptually make sense unless you look at the commentaries. The commentaries say, what does it mean come? What is God saying come? You're at B, Moses, come to A means come to me, right? Come to me, God, because I will walk you every step of the way. All I'm asking you is the willingness to walk through your fears, through your doubts, through your uncertainties. And whenever there is a great shift that we anticipate, things will be a little bit chaotic until we reach the place of harmony and peace. It is always darkest before the dawn, so God is saying this is the parsha before the great Exodus. I'm asking you to come to me, and I will walk with you in the face of any pharaohs that you will encounter in the world. Do not be afraid. Now let's take this a step further. Bo is spelled Beit Aleph, literally B-A. It's going from Beit, which means duality, the number 2, or polarity, back to Aleph. It is the great duality that is returning to the unity consciousness of Aleph, the great oneness of Aleph. And that's exactly what's happening in the entire parsha. That is the purpose behind each of the plagues. Each of the plagues is there as kind of like a symptom to help diagnose as a sign of the times. If you want to look at the health status of the times, you look at the signs and symptoms, and those would be the plagues. But it's all there necessary not to further deteriorate the society, but rather to engage and invite one into the great healing, the great metamorphosis into something much greater, a higher frequency of being in the world that the great light of the Exodus promises us. So we see this also in the last plague. The 10th plague is Makata Bechorot, which means the slaying of the firstborn. What is the firstborn in Egypt? What does it imply? The firstborn were the ones who called all the shots. They were the establishment. They were the voice of the establishment. They held all the power. So let me make this one point. Going back to the locusts. If you remember, the danger of the locusts is when you get into this kind of mob mentality where your thinking is surrendered and replaced by the group. Now, comes to teach us is before the great Exodus, before the great redemption, when God is going to herald and initiate the new day, the new awakening, you have to have the establishment replaced. Okay? There has to be a slaying of the firstborn. Problem with the establishment is they really consider themselves gods unto themselves. They are untouchables. And we see this in the name, in the Hebrew of firstborn. The firstborn in Hebrew is called Bechor. Makata Bechorot means the slaying, or the replacement, the destruction of the firstborn. What is the firstborn? What do the letters teach us? Well, you have Beit, Chaf, and Resh. Beit is number 2 in numerology. Chaf is 20, and Resh is 200. 2, 20, 200, they all belong in the same numerical family. It's a family of twos. They all imply duality, the us versus them, right? They all imply duality, but one, it grows in power from 2 to 20 to 200. So the Bechor, the firstborn, they, even though they saw themselves as the shot callers of society, the truth is that they needed to be replaced. The voice of the establishment is corrupt, it's deceptive, it's self-serving, and that needs to be replaced when the great day comes. And that's why it's plague number 10. When you start to see the establishment and the status quo crumbling, that's a sign of something that needs to happen before you pass over, before you cross over. With this in mind, may we all be blessed. May our transitions be smooth. May we always only answer to number 1. The slaying of the number 2 means you're giving rise to the unity consciousness. Up until now in human evolution, we've needed a competitor, we've needed enemies, we've needed challenges and obstacles in order to grow. But when that great day comes, our consciousness is going to be at such a higher level that we can adapt to Aleph, the unity consciousness, which automatically includes variety. It automatically includes within it diversity. But we don't have to have an enemy, a competitor, in order to evolve. That's the difference. That's in the old model. So we should all be preparing ourselves as worthy to the new energy, the new light coming into the world, by staying away from any kind of mob thinking. Don't let any ism be your pharaoh to control you. Instead, rely on your own inner moral compass, your intuition, the God temple inside of you that is revealing to you where you need to grow and how you need to evolve in the world. May we all have peace, blessings, health, and safety. Until next week, Shalom.